When we first moved into the city, I thought it was a new chapter, a clean page, maybe even a second chance. The skyline from our apartment looked like something out of a movie: glass, steel, and motion, the kind of place where things happen. I remember standing by the window that first night, watching the traffic slide beneath us like a stream of red and white lights, and thinking, this is it. We made it. Lauren didn't say much. She stood beside me, arms folded over her chest, her reflection pale in the window's glass. It's different, she said finally. Not good, not bad, just different. I told myself she needed time. We'd lived our whole lives in the suburbs, surrounded by neat lawns and polite neighbors who waved whether they liked you or not. The city was noise and chaos and sirens echoing off the buildings at 2 a.m., but it was also opportunity. For me, at least. The promotion came fast, faster than I expected. The partners said they'd been watching my work for a while, that I had a rare kind of precision. That's corporate speak for you work too much and don't complain. Still, it meant more money, more recognition, a step closer to the version of myself I thought I was supposed to become. Lauren didn't share the excitement. She smiled when I told her, hugged me even, but her body felt distant, like she was hugging someone she didn't really know anymore. When I mentioned the relocation, she hesitated. Do we have to? She asked. Can't you just commute? It's not that far. Her words didn't sit right. It was only an hour away. I told her that. She nodded, said she understood, but her eyes lingered somewhere else. On her phone maybe, or on a thought she wasn't ready to share. The weeks before the move were filled with small arguments that made no sense. Boxes left unpacked. Missed calls. A strange defensiveness whenever I mentioned her dentist, Dr. Miller. She'd been seeing him for years, she said, ever since she cracked a molar in college. He's the only one who gets it right, she'd tell me with a half laugh. I never questioned it then. I should have. Our apartment downtown was modern in the way that feels temporary: gray walls, stainless steel, cold lighting. Lauren tried to make it home. Plants by the windows, candles that smelled like pine and vanilla, a photo of us on the nightstand. But she didn't seem to belong there. Every weekend, she'd drive back to the old town, saying she had appointments, errands, a friend to see. You don't mind, right? She'd ask, already halfway to the door. It's just for a day. At first, I didn't. I had work. Endless spreadsheets, client audits, and conference calls that blurred into one another. I told myself it was temporary, that she'd adjust. But over time, something inside me began to scratch at the walls, a quiet unease that didn't go away. It was in the small things. The way she'd smile at her phone and then quickly turn it face down. The way she came home smelling faintly of someone else's cologne, not strong enough to accuse, but enough to notice. The way she started saying, I need some space, when I tried to touch her. I'd lie awake beside her, watching the city lights bleed through the curtains, wondering what had changed. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was us. Maybe it was this city, too big, too loud, swallowing the parts of us that used to make sense. But deep down, I knew it wasn't the city. It was her. And though I didn't want to admit it, something in me was already preparing for the moment I'd have to find out what she was hiding. They say the human mind has a way of protecting itself, softening the edges of what we don't want to see. I think that's what I was doing back then. Protecting myself. Lauren's trips became more frequent. What started as once every 2 weeks turned into every weekend, then sometimes in the middle of the week. She always had a reason: a crown replacement, a root canal check, some follow-up work. I didn't even know dentists required that much maintenance. But I told myself not to question it. She'd leave early, before sunrise, coffee in hand, the faint sound of heels clicking across the hardwood floor. I'd hear the elevator doors close and lie there in the dark, telling myself it was fine. People travel for dental work all the time, especially when they trust someone, especially when it's familiar. Sometimes she'd come back the same evening, sometimes late at night. Once, it was after midnight. I remember the sound of her keys, her careful steps, like she didn't want to wake me. I pretended to sleep, breathing slow, eyes closed. She stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching me, then slipped into the bathroom. When she came out, she smelled like soap, mint, and something faintly floral, not her usual perfume. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit, but I pushed it aside. It was easy to rationalize things back then. I was busy, exhausted, detached. My new job had me working 10-hour days, sometimes more. The city's rhythm consumed everything: the noise, the lights, the deadlines. I told myself we were both just adjusting. She'd sit across from me at dinner, scrolling through her phone while I talked about work. I'd catch her smiling at the screen, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. "Who's that?" I asked once, half joking. She looked up, startled. "Oh, just Rachel. From the old book club." I nodded, forced a smile. "Right. Rachel." I didn't even remember a Rachel. The next day, she texted me a photo, her at some coffee shop, holding a paper cup, sunlight hitting her face just right. "Don't work too hard," she wrote. I stared at that message for a long time. It looked like something you'd send to someone you actually missed. That night, I printed the photo at work. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to remind myself she was still real, still mine. I pinned it to the board above my desk, between client charts and performance reports. One of my coworkers, Mark, stopped by my cubicle. "Your wife?" he asked. "Yeah." He nodded approvingly. "Lucky man." I smiled, but the words sat in my throat like stones. I tried calling her that afternoon. No answer. Texted. Waited. She replied 3 hours later. "Sorry, had an appointment." "Love you." That "love you" felt different. Like a phrase remembered, not felt. Still, I convinced myself nothing was wrong. She was stressed. I was tired. We just needed time. One night, I brought home her favorite Thai food, green curry, extra spice. I even lit a candle on the table like we used to. She came home late, hair damp from the rain, makeup smudged. "Dinner's ready," I said, trying to sound casual. She smiled, a soft, distracted smile. "Oh, Ethan, you didn't have to." We ate mostly in silence. The candle flickered between us, its light bending across her face. There was something about her eyes. They looked elsewhere, like she was halfway out the door even while sitting right there. When she went to shower, I sat at the table staring at her phone she'd left behind. I didn't touch it, just stared. The screen lit up once. Dr. Miller. "Same time next week?" My chest tightened. I reached out, but stopped just short of touching it. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe he was reminding her of an appointment. I sat there for a long time. The food cold, the candle burned down to wax. When she came out, I was already pretending to sleep. It's strange how lies start to sound normal when you hear them often enough. They settle into your routines, like the hum of the refrigerator. There, but ignorable, until one day you realize you can't unhear it. Lauren's lies were small at first. A change in her tone. A pause too long before answering a simple question. A weekend that ran longer than expected. Nothing you could point to directly. Nothing that would stand up in court. But lies don't need to be loud to rot something inside you. She began dressing differently on the days she went to the suburb, subtle at first. A touch more makeup, perfume she hadn't worn in years, jeans that fit a little too deliberately. She said it was because she wanted to feel put together. "Don't you like it?" she asked one morning, standing in front of the mirror, turning slightly as if to test how her reflection might look to someone else. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "You look great." And she did. Too great. But I told myself that was unfair. She had the right to feel beautiful. I was the one buried in spreadsheets and balance sheets, the one too tired to talk by the time she came home. Maybe she was just trying to find herself again. People reinvent themselves after moving. That's normal, right? Still, there were moments, brief, sharp ones, when something slipped. A scent I didn't recognize lingering in her hair. A new playlist on her phone, filled with songs I'd never heard her listen to. Once, I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the elevator mirror. Her face was calm, but her eyes were bright, alive in a way they hadn't been in months. It hit me then. She was happy, just not with me. That thought sat heavy for days, pressing down on my chest every time she smiled at her phone. One Thursday night, she told me she had another appointment. "Dr. Miller's been adjusting my bite," she said. "It's kind of complicated. Didn't you just see him last week?" "Yeah," she said quickly, but it didn't feel right. She left before I could say anything else. Her absence turned the apartment into something I didn't recognize, sterile, echoing, too clean. I tried to distract myself with work, but my mind kept drifting to that one text on her phone. Same time next week. That night, I found myself sitting at her vanity, staring at the things she left behind. Makeup brushes, jewelry, a faint smear of lipstick on a coffee mug. It felt intrusive, like stepping into someone else's life. I opened a drawer, nothing but hair ties and receipts. But one of them caught my eye, a gas station slip dated last week, timestamped 10:42 p.m. Too late for a dental appointment. I should have stopped there. I should have accepted what that meant. But denial is easier than pain. I tore the receipt in half, tossed it into the trash, and told myself I was being paranoid. When she came home later that night, I was still awake, pretending to work. She kissed me on the cheek, a quick, perfunctory gesture. Her lips were cold. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, smiling faintly. "Just tired." "You?" "Same." We went to bed without another word. Her back was turned to me, her breathing slow, steady. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the city pressing down from above. Thousands of lives stacked on top of each other, each one hiding something. I realized I didn't know when we stopped being us. Maybe it wasn't sudden. Maybe it was like erosion, slow, invisible, until one day the ground beneath you just gives way. But I wasn't ready to fall yet. Not until I was sure. And some quiet, trembling part of me already knew that moment was coming soon. It happened on a Wednesday. A quiet, gray sort of day, the kind where the city looks washed out and half asleep. I was working from home, spreadsheets open on one screen, emails blinking on the other. Lauren had gone out early again, saying she needed to pick something up from the old house. I didn't question it. Not out loud, anyway. Around noon, the apartment felt too still. The air conditioner hummed faintly, but everything else was silent, the kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. I went to the kitchen to make coffee, half thinking about deadlines, half trying not to think about her. That's when her phone rang. It was sitting on the counter, plugged into the charger. The screen lit up, unknown caller. Normally, I would have ignored it. But something in me, something small and cold, made me freeze. I watched the screen until it went dark again. Then, seconds later, it lit up once more. Same number. I hesitated, then picked it up. My thumb hovered over the green icon. I didn't answer. I just listened. A few seconds passed, and the call went to voicemail. Her phone beeped, then fell silent again. I waited. 30 seconds later, it buzzed. New voicemail. My hand was shaking when I opened it. A man's voice, low and calm. "Hey, it's me. You left your scarf in the car last night. Don't worry, I'll keep it until next time." That was it. 13 seconds. No name. No details. Just me. The sound of his voice was so ordinary it made my skin crawl. He didn't sound like a stranger calling a married woman. He sounded like someone used to doing it. I stood there for a long time, the coffee machine sputtering behind me, filling the silence with that hollow hiss. My first instinct wasn't anger, it was confusion. I played it again. Once, twice, 3 times. Each time it sounded more real. Then I started to reason with myself, the way people do when they're standing too close to the truth. Maybe it's a wrong number. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe the scarf isn't even hers. But deep down, the denial didn't hold. That night, When she came home, I watched her carefully. She looked normal, her smile easy, casual, practiced. "How was your day?" she asked, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Fine," I said. "Yours?" "Long," she sighed. "I'm exhausted." She sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone. The same phone I'd listened to hours earlier, now resting casually in her hand, like it hadn't just torn something open inside me. At one point, she glanced at me. "What?" she asked, catching my stare. "Nothing," I said too quickly. "Just tired." She nodded, sipped her wine, and went back to her screen. I excused myself early that night, said I needed to finish some work. In reality, I just couldn't look at her anymore. When she finally went to bed, I stayed in the living room with the lights off, the glow of the city leaking through the blinds. Her phone was charging again on the counter, silent this time. I thought about deleting the voicemail, pretending it never happened. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I replayed it one last time, his voice echoing in the dark apartment, soft and confident, like a ghost whispering in my ear. "Don't worry, I'll keep it until next time." That phrase looped in my head long after the message ended. I realized then it wasn't just a voice on the phone. It was a presence, and it was closer than I wanted to believe. The morning after the voicemail, everything felt sharper. The sunlight cut through the blinds like knives. The hum of the city outside wasn't just noise anymore. It was a pulse, a countdown I couldn't hear before. Lauren was in the kitchen, humming softly to herself, her hair damp from the shower. I watched her from the hallway, coffee mug in hand, feeling like a stranger in my own home. She looked so normal, so casual, like someone rehearsing a role they've played for years. My phone buzzed. It was an email from the partners. They wanted me in Chicago next month, a 3-week audit for one of our biggest clients. High profile, high stakes, the kind of assignment that could fast-track me into a senior partner seat. The kind of assignment you don't turn down. I stared at the email while Lauren scrolled through her own phone, oblivious. A hollow thought whispered in my head. 3 weeks away. 3 weeks for her to drive wherever she wanted. 3 weeks for him to become more than a voice on a voicemail. "Everything okay?" she asked, glancing up. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Work stuff." She nodded and went back to her phone. I watched her thumb move over the screen, quick and sure. All day at the office, the email sat open on my monitor like a wound. Mark stopped by my desk. "You're taking the Chicago job, right?" he asked. "You'd be crazy not to." "Yeah," I said automatically. "Of course." But inside, something recoiled. That night, I brought it up to Lauren over dinner. "They want me in Chicago for 3 weeks," I said. "That's great, Ethan," she said instantly, without looking up. "You've been waiting for something like this." I studied her face. No hesitation. No hint of missing me. Just approval. "Would you be okay with that?" I asked carefully. "Why wouldn't I be?" she said, finally meeting my eyes. Her smile was small, polite. "We'll be fine." "We." The words sounded hollow. Later, in bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The city hummed outside, but inside was a deeper hum, a choice forming, a shape I couldn't ignore. If I took the Chicago job, it would mean more money, more status. But it would also mean leaving her here, alone, or worse, not alone at all. If I stayed, I'd be giving up the one thing I'd been working toward my entire life. And for what? For someone who might already belong to someone else? I turned my head. She was asleep, or pretending to be. Her back was to me, her breathing even. In the dark, I whispered to myself, "I can't do both." It was the first honest thing I'd said all day. I told myself it wasn't about catching her. It was about clarity, a clean line between truth and imagination. That's what I kept repeating that Saturday morning as she got dressed. Jeans, a soft gray sweater, her hair tied back. The same quiet ritual as always. "Going to the dentist again?" I asked, pretending to scroll through my phone. She smiled without looking up. "Yeah, just a quick visit." "Want me to drive you?" She laughed, a little too easily. It's fine, Ethan. You hate waiting rooms. She kissed me on the cheek, a motion rehearsed, automatic. Then she was gone. 5 minutes later, I followed. Her car, the white sedan, was easy to spot among the morning traffic. I stayed back 2, sometimes 3 cars behind, letting the city swallow me in its movement. Every red light, every lane change, every brake, my pulse matched her taillights. It took about 40 minutes to reach the suburbs. The sky hung low, gray and heavy, the kind of light that makes everything look washed out and unreal. She turned off the main road, into a quiet residential area, not toward the dental clinic, somewhere else. I slowed down. Her car rolled to a stop in front of a small 2-story house with a blue door. Not a clinic. No sign, no parking lot. Just a home. She sat in the car for a few seconds, maybe checking her reflection, maybe just breathing. Then she got out. The sound of her heels on the pavement carried across the still street. The door opened before she reached it. A man stepped out. I didn't see his face at first, just the shape of him, tall, confident, casual in a way that made my chest tighten. She smiled when she saw him. Not the polite smile she gave me in the mornings. Something softer. Familiar. He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and in that motion, everything I'd been denying for months collapsed. I didn't need to see more. Didn't want to. But I couldn't look away either. They disappeared inside, and the door closed behind them. The street was silent again. Only the faint hum of air conditioners and the slow rhythm of my heartbeat in my ears. I don't know how long I sat there, minutes, maybe hours. At some point, the world lost its edges. I remember the sound of a lawnmower starting somewhere down the block. Children's laughter in the distance. Ordinary life, moving on, untouched. But inside the car, everything was still. My hands on the steering wheel. My throat dry. My mind, blank, then suddenly, violently clear. It wasn't rage I felt. Not even betrayal. It was something quieter, heavier, like the sound of a door closing deep inside me. When she finally came out, the light had changed. The sky was orange now, the day already ending. She looked lighter, as if whatever burden she'd been carrying no longer existed. She got into her car and drove away. I didn't follow this time. Instead, I sat there until the streetlights flickered on, until the sky went from orange to black, and whispered to no one. It's done. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. The apartment smelled the same. Coffee from the morning still lingered in the air. Her scarf hung on the back of the chair, her slippers by the couch. Nothing had changed, and yet everything was different. I closed the door behind me, quietly, as if stepping into someone else's life. The ticking of the wall clock seemed louder than usual, each second a small accusation. The evening light spilled through the blinds in thin, dusty stripes, painting the room in a dull, amber tone. I stood there, just listening, to the silence, to the refrigerator's hum, to the echo of my own heartbeat. On the kitchen table lay her cup from breakfast, a faint trace of lipstick on the rim. I stared at it longer than I should have. It was absurd, how something so small could make the air so heavy. I poured myself a glass of water. My hand trembled, barely noticeable, but enough to make the glass rattle against the sink. I didn't cry. I didn't even think about crying. The mind has a strange way of protecting itself. It shuts down what it can't understand. So I just moved through the apartment like an intruder, careful not to disturb the stillness. In the bedroom, her perfume hung in the air, faint, floral, familiar. The bed was perfectly made. The same blue blanket. The same pillows. I sat down on the edge of it, the mattress giving way slightly under my weight. For a long time, I stared at the wall. The shadows moved slowly, almost rhythmically, like breathing. And then it hit me, the strange calm that comes when you finally stop running from the obvious. All those months of denial, of pretending not to notice. The late returns, the distant gaze, the faint smile when her phone lit up. It wasn't that I didn't see it. I just refused to let it exist. Because once you see something clearly, you can never unsee it again. The phone buzzed on the nightstand. Her name on the screen. I didn't answer. It rang twice, then stopped. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, tracing the cracks in the paint with my eyes. A strange thought came. This ceiling has seen everything. Every silence, every argument, every pretense of closeness. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. A city sound. A reminder that the world outside still moved, still pulsed, still existed. Indifferent to the small tragedies happening behind closed doors. I turned my head and looked at the picture frame on the nightstand. The two of us, smiling on a beach 2 summers ago. Her hair was windblown, my arm around her shoulders. We looked real. We looked like people who believed in forever. I reached out, touched the glass. It was cold. That's when I understood. It wasn't her I'd lost. It was myself. The version of me that still believed love meant safety. Now there was only stillness. No pain, no anger, just the sound of breathing, mine alone. And in that quiet, a thought surfaced, simple, terrifying, and freeing all at once. Maybe this is what beginning feels like. The morning came quietly. No calls, no messages, no sounds but the faint hum of the city outside. I made coffee out of habit, not need. The machine hissed, groaned, and filled the kitchen with the smell of something familiar, though I couldn't tell if I still liked it. At work, I was known for precision. People said I could see numbers the way surgeons see arteries, knowing exactly where to cut, where to stop, what to leave intact. That kind of thinking doesn't switch off easily. So that morning, I opened my notebook, not the company one, but a plain, leather-bound pad I'd once bought for travel notes, and wrote at the top of a blank page. Personal audit. Below it, 2 columns. Assets. Liabilities. It felt ridiculous at first, but then not so much. Under assets I wrote, health, steady income, apartment paid half, clarity new. Under liabilities, trust gone, marriage compromised, sleep, hope diminishing. I stared at those words for a long time. The page looked like every financial disaster I'd ever analyzed, the kind where numbers don't just fail, they lie. And just like in those reports, the lie wasn't in the data itself. It was in the assumptions. For years, I'd assumed stability meant happiness. I'd assumed love meant loyalty. I'd assumed that silence in a marriage was peace, not rot. That's the thing about auditing. You only see the truth when you stop believing the report and start checking the evidence. I took a sip of coffee. It had gone cold. Lauren hadn't come home last night. Her message said she was staying with a friend, something about being overwhelmed. I didn't reply. I didn't even want to. Instead, I went to the office. Work was the only place that still obeyed logic. Spreadsheets didn't lie. Deadlines didn't cheat. Profit margins didn't pretend to love you. But even there, something felt off. The fluorescent lights buzzed too loud. The voices in the hallway felt distant, like echoes from a life I'd already left. Around noon, my manager, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, stopped by my desk. "You look tired, Ethan," he said. "Everything okay?" I almost laughed. Everything okay. The phrase sounded foreign, like a relic from a world that no longer existed. "Yeah," I said. "Just didn't sleep much." He nodded and moved on. By the time I got home that evening, the sky had turned gray and the air carried that electric heaviness before a storm. I didn't turn on the lights. The apartment was dim, peaceful, unoccupied, the way truth often feels after the noise is gone. On the kitchen counter lay a note. Her handwriting. I didn't open it. Not out of anger, out of preservation. Because I already knew what it would say. Something about confusion, about space, about needing to find herself. It didn't matter anymore. The audit was complete. And for the first time, the numbers balanced, not in favor of love, not in favor of pain, but in favor of clarity. I tore the page from my notebook and pinned it to the fridge. A reminder, a new kind of truth. Then I poured myself another cup of coffee, turned toward the window, and watched the storm roll in. It started to rain just before she came home. The kind of rain that falls in thin, relentless lines, steady, not violent. The kind that erases footprints. I had already packed her things. 2 suitcases by the door, a few boxes neatly taped shut, labeled in my handwriting. Her shoes by the mat. Her coat. The small details that once meant presence, now just proof. I didn't plan to say much. Words weren't needed anymore. Everything that mattered had already been said, not by me, not by her, but by the silence between us. The sound of her car pulling into the driveway broke that silence. I stood still. The door opened. The hallway filled with the smell of wet asphalt and her perfume. "Ethan," her voice called, careful, unsure. She stepped inside, eyes darting between me and the suitcases. "What's going on?" she asked, forcing a nervous smile. I looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You don't need to pretend anymore, Lauren." The color drained from her face. "What do you mean?" Her voice cracked, almost convincingly. I nodded toward the boxes. "I think you know." She froze, then tried again, soft, pleading. "Ethan, please, if this is about me staying out, you're overthinking." I cut her off. Calmly. "There's a flash drive on the counter. It's labeled Tuesday. You might want to listen to it before saying anything else." Her lips parted slightly. She didn't move. Then, slowly, she looked at the counter and saw it. A small black drive. Ordinary. Harmless. Except it wasn't. "I had to know," I said. I couldn't live in half-truths anymore. She took a step toward me, tears already forming. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean, it was just, I didn't know how to stop." "I know." My voice sounded strange, distant, like it came from someone else. "Please, don't do this. We can fix it, I swear." "No," I shook my head. "This isn't something you fix. It's something you end." She covered her face with her hands. "I made a mistake. I love you." I looked at her, really looked. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't before. She wasn't evil or cruel. She was just small. Weak in a way I couldn't be anymore. "You should call my attorney," I said quietly. "His number's in the email I sent you. He'll handle everything." "Ethan, please," she whispered. Don't make it like this." But it already was like this. The rain outside had turned heavier, tapping against the windows like a slow clock. I picked up the last box and set it near the door. Her suitcase handle clicked softly as it extended. "I don't hate you," I said finally. "But I'm done being the version of myself that let this happen." She didn't answer, just stood there, crying, while the thunder rolled somewhere far above the city. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she stepped out, the rain catching her hair, soaking her sleeves. She turned once, maybe to say something, maybe just to see if I'd stop her. I didn't. The door closed. The sound of the rain swallowed everything else. I leaned against the wall and let out a slow breath. There was no victory in it. No satisfaction. Only a strange, clean quiet. The kind that comes after you've finally said the truth. And there's nothing left to hide behind. It's been 3 months since the rain. The days have grown shorter, the air cooler, cleaner. Autumn always had a way of making the city quieter, as if the noise itself took a step back to breathe. The apartment feels larger now, not because it is, but because there's space again, real space. Between walls, between thoughts. I kept most of the furniture, but not all. Some things belonged too much to us, and I didn't want us anymore. The framed wedding photo is gone. So is the pale blue blanket. But the coffee maker stayed. I still drink it black, still out of habit. Every morning I wake early, before the city stirs. I sit by the window, notebook open, pen in hand. Not for audits this time, but for something I call inventory of the mind. I list small things. things that don't fit into spreadsheets. Silence, clean air, my own name, time. Outside, the street glows faintly orange with the first touch of sunlight. At the curb, my new crossover catches the light, silver paint reflecting the season's gold. It's just a car, but it's also something more. A quiet reward, a symbol of continuity, of movement. Work's been good. Better, actually. My focus came back sharper than ever, as if removing one wrong variable balanced the entire equation. People at the firm noticed. My manager said I seemed lighter. Funny word, lighter. I didn't tell him how accurate that was. Sometimes, in the evenings, I take long drives. No destination, no music, just the sound of tires against asphalt and the low hum of the engine. That's where I think best. That's where the silence feels alive, not empty. I still think of her sometimes. Not with anger, not even regret. More like remembering a dream you once believed was real, until you woke up and realized it wasn't supposed to last. And that's okay. I've learned something unexpected in all this. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't rush in like a rescue. It comes quietly, like dawn creeping across the floorboards. There's no need to fill the silence anymore. No need to explain, to justify, to prove. I'm enough, just as I am. And for the first time in a long time, that sentence doesn't feel like a lie. Outside, a gust of wind stirs the fallen leaves. The crossover gleams faintly under the sun. I finish my coffee, close the notebook, and whisper to the quiet room. Let's begin again. I didn't see it at first. The truth, I mean. Not the one about her. Not the one about betrayal that I'd already learned. It was about me. Sitting alone in the quiet apartment, the city buzzing softly outside, I finally looked into the mirror. Not for grooming, not for curiosity. I just looked. The man staring back wasn't the same as the one who had trusted too easily, pretended not to notice, clung to illusions. He was quieter, harder, clearer, and in that clarity, there was a strange relief. Life had shown me something simple. Truth isn't about pain or loss. It's about seeing clearly, even when what you see shatters what you thought was unbreakable. I've kept the notebooks, the coffee routine, even the quiet drives. But I've changed the way I use them, not as distractions, not as armor, but as instruments, ways to measure my own honesty, my own presence. The crossover gleams in the driveway. The sun sets behind it, autumn leaves swirling at its wheels. I don't think about her when I drive anymore. I think about myself, the choices I make, the life I want to live. I understand now. Some doors close so that others can open. The pain doesn't vanish, but it sharpens you. It doesn't punish you, it teaches you. And in that teaching, there is freedom. Not happiness, not love regained, but the kind of quiet, undeniable weightlessness that comes when you stop pretending. I finish my coffee, set the cup down, and for the first time in a long time, I smile slightly. Because the mirror no longer reflects what I lost. It reflects what I've found. Clarity, strength, and the permission to begin again.